Merch is live right now at danielbgreene.com. Do you want to get a head soaking up books to represent your TBR? Well, you can get a t-shirt, sweatshirt, or crop hoodie, even a sticker right now. Let's get into the review. Empire of the Vampire is how I have to say the title of this book for a reason we will get into at the end. But this was written by Jay Kristoff of Nevernight fame and many other things, such as the one I've reviewed here on the channel. And it is a fascinating book to talk about. One that I totally get why it seems to be very polarizing, while overall positively reviewed. Let's get into why after we set up the story. Empire of the Vampire follows Gabriel, a Silversaint, someone who's like a half vampire, half human, set on a life to constantly battle these like evil vampiric high lords all the way down to the lowly wretches. And yes, this is actually a epic fantasy world where the sun is even taken out and vampires seem to be on the rise. But we even know that rise reaches a peak, because this takes me to the very interesting framing of Empire of the Vampire. It actually starts with us meeting Gabriel as he is being held prisoner by the vampire's empress, and he's set to be executed after he recounts his life to a vampire who can like supernaturally fast write down what he's saying. And there's a stylistic choice around this we'll get into in a minute, but let's continue fleshing out the story. This is actually a non-linear story beyond just him recounting his life. We're kind of jumping around to different sections of Gabriel's life to more deliver an overall thematic impact rather than a straightforward A to Z narrative.
I think the best way to tell the story is by starting at the end, briefly, then going back to the beginning, and periodically returning to the end, maybe giving different characters' perspectives throughout, just to give it a bit of dynamism. Otherwise, it's just sort of a linear story.
Just what happened.
That being said, of course, we do start way back in Gabriel's childhood, seeing him first discover that he's half vampiric, half man. His mother did end up having sex with a vampire, resulting in him being a bit of a bastard. Well, he's at that crucial age of a young boy becoming a man, discovering he's a vampire while going down on someone who's on... He gets his red fangs, is how I'll put that.
He's a hell of a team player.
Before going on his journey to become the most feared and last Silversaint. And there's kind of an inherent interest to the narrative, of course, because of this. I love having a story where you kind of see how amazing someone becomes, but humanizing the hell out of them by taking them all the way back to their most vulnerable time. It's been done before a lot, which a lot of things in this book have, but it's executed quite well. And I want to kind of elaborate on that point more later. But as you can tell from one certain eating thing I said earlier, there is a heavy emphasis on a kind of punk aesthetic, heavy just gothic style to Empire of the Vampire from beginning to end. It is trying to be edgy. Putting this very simply, it walks the walk it talks. It's not someone you see being like dressed up like a vampire, like, oh, look at that. It's someone who you see like dressed up as like a badass and you're like, oh, he might beat the shit out of me. That's the vibe Empire of a Vampire gets off. But Jay Kristoff kind of commits to that 100%. There's no hesitation to the authorial voice that is building out this world. And that's what makes it kind of work. Certainly, there are times where you kind of feel like you're hearing one of the goth kids from South Park monologue, but more often than not, this Castlevania Nocturne-esque, just lore-heavy, massive vampire fantasy epic lands on its feet with its stylistic choices, despite how crude and irreverent it can be at its core. You're gonna hear a whole lot of very simple insults, your mama jokes, someone saying my face, all the time. This might have the most F-bombs of any book I've ever read in it. Okay, this is embarrassing. How did I not think in my first recording of this video to give an award for most number of F-bombs? That's of course award worthy here on the channel. And yes, Jay Kristoff wins most put in a book. Congratulations, you did it. And now I'm because I don't really have anything to give you. So I decided to get my expired US passport. I'll send that to you if you want it. I have a key that opens nothing. I'll send that as well if you want it. And then I have 4 random Shannara books that are first edition, and I will legitimately send all of that stuff to you if you want it. The only thing is I just realized that it might be an expired passport, but there's a lot of sensitive information in here. I'm putting great faith in Jay Kristoff that he will not steal my identity, but I'll do it. I'll send it. Oh, international shipping. Are you American? I don't think so. But it makes sense for the world and the character. The story does very much so feel Witcher-esque, which the comparison is made to for a few key narrative reasons I won't get into for spoiler reasons. But on top of that, I feel like there's a hefty scoop of Black Company in here as well. And then finally, especially for the formation of the character of Gabriel himself, a heaping sprinkling of Berserk on top. Because as Berserk is the story of Guts being heavily traumatized and then trying to heal, find connection and meaning beyond the terrible things done to him, this is also, at least to the point I've reached at the end of the first book, the story of Gabriel kind of going through hell, but managing to find something special there, which I want to talk about the themes that are really permeating the page from beginning to end for Empire of the Vampire. Most importantly, ideas around loss, whether it's losing people, your purpose in life, yourself, your view of the world, and of course, faith. Empire of the Vampire wants to experiment with how that can change someone. There's a mantra repeated again and again throughout the book that hearts don't break, they only bruise. But it's not exactly taken as a fact. This is an idea that's dissected and pulled apart in a way where, yeah, you'll even see someone lose something again, and can that break a heart? But despite all of this loss, there's an additional idea put forward from Jay Kristoff where, yes, you can lose your faith, you can lose your view of the world, yourself, but beyond all the things society tells you are important, there's a purpose to life beyond that, and that's finding something that's special to you, clinging to it, making that your purpose. And then again, the book asks if you manage to overcome these like societal insistences on certain beliefs you're supposed to have, and you manage to find what's important to you, what if that's then taken away? And that's where this book becomes extremely painful. Empire of the Vampire is a mean book to its readers in some ways, and to Gabriel. Now let's talk about Gabriel. He's an asshole, but the book is aware of that. He's meant to be someone who, yes, has been through hell. It's made him a worse person, but he's going up against actual monsters, so you're of course on his side. But in addition to that, kind of because of who he is, but more so because of the world around him, everyone feels like an op to Gabriel. There is antagonists left, right, up, and down, to the point where you're just gonna hear the name of a vampire and be like, sure, yeah, that person too is a high lord, immortal, 100-year, whatever, they're bad, kill them. But all of these stylistic prose choices as well, where it does feel like gothic and punk, you have to remember, this is Gabriel recounting everything. And so there's an argument of unreliable narrator, I'm sure, happening within the fandom too, as every book that's kind of narrated by a protagonist ends up having. You have to take some of the things Gabriel is saying with a grain of salt. And at times, even the vampire who was interviewing him has a little bit of pushback as well. Because Gabriel's life, even if only half the things that we have to take on face value are true, is extraordinary. He's not a chosen one, but he is a special one. I do want to say there is specifically obvious effort from Jay Kristoff to have Gabriel fit a chosen one role in a way and then heavily subvert it, which you'll see often in grimdark stories, the chosen one trope being ripe for commentary or subversion within the darker genre. But the way it's handled here, I quite enjoyed, because it's also not taken in a same kind of sacred way, and instead more directly reflects the attitude of the character. And Gabriel's sense of humor, because he's not a highly educated person, he's been born into a life of brutality and worship, is quite childish in some ways. And there is, in addition to that, sexism exists in the world. Silversaints have to be men, and so women kind of have another warrior role in society that comes in, but it's pulling from an era in history where also just sexism existed, and also there's going to be a whole lot of usages of the words like whore and because it's just supposed to be gross. Yet, Jay Kristoff never punches down. There is, in my opinion, a very important distinction between sexism existing in a world and things like that, and then an author being sexist or punching down. Here, we actually see Gabriel, despite his crass crudeness, because he's kind of an alternate person in society, he is quite accepting of humans that are more alternative, which I feel like is a long-running tradition within fantasy, where you'll have like alternate creatures or people associate with outcasts from society. That's just a thing that I think is well documented, probably worth a whole video later on. That transitions me though to the final Berserkian element that I feel like really manages to succeed here in Empire of the Vampire. There's a lot of hope. There is a lot of smaller moments of seeing the beauty in humanity, and that's kind of my favorite realization that grimdark can kind of exclusively have. If you make a miserable world and it's just filled with bastards, having a moment of kindness or a moment of just good feels all the brighter. It just shines in the night. And to me, personally, as a reader, that's one of the large reasons why I'm attracted to grimdark. There are few emotional beats on a page that have hit me, like profound moments in grimdark where, despite all the negativity, someone is able to find purpose or something special or do something selfless just because they know it's right. It slaps. It fucking goes. Which, with the setting of this being Gabriel in a world where we know the vampires have won and he's prisoner, it kind of adds this bitter irony to so much of the messaging and this like negative undertone that permeates the book every time you're reminded, and it like pulls you out back to these two talking about the story being told. And it's wildly successful at that. I will say though, there is a sense of humor from Jay Kristoff that works in both levels of the narrative though, that's not necessarily coming from Gabriel. I think he's just a funny writer. Like, love at first sight for a horse, that's funny. That gets a haha out of me. But this takes me to two stylistic choices that I struggled with here in the book. Yeah, like I had some issues with the humor at times. Some of the crudeness went a bit over the top. I feel like it could be condensed a little, but none of those are real problems. This is a personal thing, but I've talked to multiple people who've read Empire of the Vampire, and it bothered them as well. Some not, some so. So, because Gabriel is recounting a story to someone, it's taken like literally in the book. And so everything, aside from the scenes where he's just talking to the person who's having him as a prisoner, is in quotes. And then if someone talks, it's double quotes. And if you're doing the audiobook, you just don't have to worry about this, but that messed with my head so much for a while. There was like a gear shift that had to happen that like had all the cranky noises you can imagine, where I just struggled to be like, no, that's not dialogue. God damn it. But it is, he's talking. Though, to be fair, it does add this tension, especially towards like the end of chapters, where you're kind of wondering where it's going to break. And we're going to flip back to having this prison scene because there are interjections. It's kind of like, to pull from a really strange example, the Princess Bride movie, where occasionally the kid just bursts out and interrupts and you're like, ah, right, we're being told a story.
He's dead.
Just it's not fair.
Grandpa, wait. What did Fezzik mean he's dead?
And how successfully that is utilized, especially as you get deeper into the story, I think the stylistic choice is worth it, but it is a different having the protagonist recount and narrate something for you story than how you see executed in like Kingkiller. It is different. And then in terms of humor, I'm not sure if this is an intentional joke or not, but there's a bit of an absurdity that comes for free with how we're supposed to be taking this being written as a reader, because it's justified in the text that like the vampire wants Gabriel to recount his life like fully. But then Gabriel recounts his life like this. Chloe combed one mousy curl off her freckled cheek. She spoke slow, choosing her words with utmost care. That's in the quote, like that, he's saying that. And then dialogue quotes, "You and Azzy don't deserve what they did to you. I was sick with it every day afterwards. And I'm sorry that," close quote, now quote, double quote, because he's responding, "So sorry you didn't even come to tell us goodbye." Like, you're probably gonna handle it just fine, and eventually my brain adjusted. But it's so funny to me that that means Gabriel, especially if you're switching the audiobook, because then you're like literally hearing his words, is sitting there like doing impressions and kind of like doing a full book. That's kind of a dick move, right? He wanted detail, but you're sitting there like, she had a freckle on her cheek. Oh yeah, I met her 20 years ago, but she had a freckle. Again, it is justified in the text. He wants like a full recounting, but this is a full, like imagine if you asked someone to tell you their life story and they gave you this, and this is only volume 1 of 3. You know, Grandpa, I know we don't pay enough attention to you sometimes, and I'm sorry about that. And I know you've been wanting to do this for a long time, so I think I'm ready to hear about the war. Well, you see, it all started back in 1939 when I bought my first truck. I saw it on the lot, shining in the summer's day, and the salesman walked to me briskly, saying, "Hello, young one. I don't know if you have the money to buy this car," he said briskly. I responded sharply, "Oh, but sir, I do. I do." Too many adverbs. I knew that car immediately like the back of my hand, so I was determined to win. "Sir, I'm willing to pay cash now," I said. Not like this. Quickly. He responded, "No. Well, son, it's irresponsible to keep that money on you." Briskly. Not a criticism, just a quirk I think is absolutely worth note. But then there is a second stylistic choice that kind of drove me up the wall, and it's in the narration. Though, the narrator does do a really good job overall, captures the tone, really like a powerful narrator, name here. Genuinely, I think they're really good. Not my top 10, but yeah, solid narration. But they made the choice that when a character yells in the book, they do like a scream whisper. So instead of going like, "No," they go, "No." Personal preference, I just want you to know in case you share that, go in to expect it, because it sounds like someone's trying to tell you a dramatic story in a library. It's a little strange. And a sentiment I've seen repeated about Empire the Vampire is that it feels familiar, but is new. And I agree with that. A lot of the elements here are things that I have come across before, but the combination is just hitting different. It's like a dish composed of ingredients you've had before, but not cooked this way. And there's something really nice about that made Empire the Vampire quite refreshing for me to read. I wanted to get into an epic fantasy, but I wasn't in the mood to start something that was going to be like 30 books long. So this trilogy was a nice turn to take. Up next, though, is the Wandering Inn condensing. That's going to be a whole new thing. All of that being said, though, Empire the Vampire is a smashing success. It's not going to be for everybody, especially if you are kind of offended by a crass story or you don't like seeing modern religious stuff being twisted into a fantasy world. I'm aware there are people who are bothered by that because I'm actually currently writing that. So there are people who are just going to be bouncing off this material. But I respect someone having a vision, knowing it's not going to be some people's taste, but going balls to the wall with it. And Jay Kristoff has a strong authorial voice. Like, this is what it needs to be 100%. And if you are a vampire fan and you are specifically looking for epic vampire fantasy, this is the best example of it I can think of, outside of like animes, mangas, stuff like that. So for me, Empire the Vampire is going to be getting a strong 8 out of 10. But now, why do I have to say it Empire of the Vampire? Because in my dumb brain, Empire of the Vampire sounds like a Lynn Kabasinski film, the guy who did Curse of the Wolf, which has this song. And so, the entire time I'm reading Empire of the Vampire, there's a very stupid part of my brain that's picturing it like a Lynn Kabasinski film, which it's not, but it made it very funny. I'm sitting there reading this like intense gothic heady dialogue like, no, that's wrong. But that's going to leave me to asking you, audience, are you interested in Empire of the Vampire? Have you consumed it, drunk it dry? And what are your thoughts as well? Especially what did you think of the stylistic choice? Maybe it's because I'm dyslexic that my brain struggled with it a little bit more. I don't know. Like and subscribe if you have not already. Hit the Patreon if you want to support what I do here. And have a good one, y'all. Peace.